Adrian Mercer was successful in saving Isla Rowan. He altered the catastrophic events of their past relationship 7 years ago. The cost, however, was terminal. He had deleted every version of his own future. Standing in a crowded room, watching Isla exchange vows with Colton Reeves, Adrian recognized the terrifying paradox. He had secured her happiness at the expense of his own eradication. The history he fought to correct had corrected him instead. To understand how a man could willingly erase himself for love, it is necessary to examine the starting point of the obsession. The genesis of the time loop self-destruction was exactly 4:17 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday, September 14, 2027. Adrian jolted awake. His location was precise. A cheap, sterile apartment in Chicago, for blocks from the firm where he would soon be fired. He stared at the ceiling. The date displayed on the digital clock, September 14, 2027. He was 34 years old. His clothes were the same charcoal suit and blue shirt he had worn on that infamous Tuesday, the day he and Isla had the fight about the missed train and the forgotten tickets. That argument 7 years prior had been the precise moment their relationship began its slow, irreversible decline. Adrian immediately checked his left wrist. The watch was locked, the hands frozen precisely at 4:17 p.m. The familiar nausea of temporal displacement washed over him. This was the third iteration. Adrian stood up, his gaze fixing on the framed photograph on the dresser. Isla, smiling, her arm wrapped around him. The image was subtly fainter than he remembered from the last loop. He knew the sequence of the next 6 hours. The phone call he would receive, the excuse he would give, the lie he would tell Isla about his delay. He knew where he needed to intercept her. He grabbed his coat. Adrian had lost everything once already. Now, he was committed to losing himself entirely, if it meant preserving the memory of her loving him. He checked the time again. 4:17 p.m. The opportunity to correct history had restarted. Adrian Mercer woke precisely at 6 a.m. The ceiling fan rotated at the designated speed. The light streaming through the blinds was identical to the memory data stored. This was the past. Specifically, it was the morning of the 14th of October, 28 months prior to the established relationship termination point. The objective was clear: navigate this specific day and the subsequent weeks, utilizing foreknowledge to eliminate all known structural deficiencies that led to the eventual separation from Isla Rowan. Adrian proceeded through the morning routine with surgical precision. He bypassed the usual morning arguments about organization, a low-level friction point previously cataloged. When Isla entered the kitchen, Adrian had already prepared the coffee, minimizing the opportunity for initial conversational instability. Isla Rowan smiled. The expression was genuine, confirming the successful calibration of the timeline environment. She initiated contact concerning the dinner plans. End quote. "We still set for dinner with the Millers tonight?" End quote. Isla asked, retrieving her favorite mug, which Adrian had intentionally placed in an accessible location. In the original sequence, Adrian had responded dismissively, prioritizing a spontaneous work commitment. This was logged as failure point alpha, dismissing shared social engagement. Adrian executed the required modification. End quote. "The Millers are essential," end quote. He stated, maintaining neutral vocal tonality. End quote. "I cleared the project timeline specifically. We are attending." End quote. Isla paused. She registered the difference. The usual resistance was absent. End quote. "Good," end quote. She confirmed. End quote. "I was worried about your presentation prep. You sounded stressed about the financials yesterday." End quote. End quote. "The financials are managed," end quote. Adrian replied. He had spent the previous evening, the first night of the temporal return, revising the problematic presentation files stored on his laptop. He had access to the final, optimized data set from the future, allowing him to bypass several weeks of professional anxiety that had previously strained the relationship dynamics. The immediate atmosphere stabilized. The tension level was recorded at February 10th, significantly lower than the projected 7/10 for this morning based on the original data logs. However, the modification introduced an immediate systemic alteration. Adrian retrieved his phone to check the work calendar. He had a pre-scheduled, critical video conference with his supervisor, Ms. Davidson, at 9:30 a.m. This meeting, in the original timeline, had served as the catalyst for the professional pressure that spiraled into relationship neglect. The calendar entry was gone. The 9:30 a.m. slot was blank. Adrian checked his email client. He searched for the confirmation chain for the Davidson conference. There was no record of the meeting invitation. Furthermore, the previous 7 emails exchanged with Ms. Davidson in the week prior were absent from the inbox history. He accessed his corporate HR portal. His project assignment, a high-profile technology merger codenamed Project Icarus, which had defined his career trajectory for the next 2 years, was listed as pending reassignment. A slight tremor registered in Adrian and Apo's hand. This was faster than anticipated. The temporal fabric was reacting to micro-changes with macro-deletions. By resolving the professional stress point early, he had eliminated the necessity of the entire professional track. End quote. You look tense again, Adrian, end quote. Isla noted from the doorway, observing him staring at the blank screen. Adrian quickly locked the screen. End quote. System update delay, end quote. He lied, end quote. Nothing critical, end quote. He registered the necessity of immediate countermeasures. If his future professional stability eroded too quickly, he would present as an unstable entity, which would accelerate Isla's eventual gravitational shift toward the rival variable Colton Reeves. The rivalry matrix dictated that Colton Reeves, the stability factor, was due to enter the periphery of Isla and Apo's life within the next 3 weeks through a shared volunteer opportunity. Adrian had to reinforce his current position and establish permanence before that introduction occurred. Adrian transitioned the conversation to a planned vacation. A trip to the coast they had always intended but postponed due to his original professional demands. End quote. I have finalized the coastal itinerary, end quote. Adrian stated, end quote. Departure in 4 weeks. I've booked the cabin with the ocean view you preferred. End quote. Isla's reaction was complex. It was a combination of pleasure and mild confusion. End quote. That and Apo's wonderful, Adrian, end quote. She said slowly, end quote. But I thought we were holding off until the end of the quarter. Your budget analysis? End quote. End quote. The financial forecasts have been optimized, end quote. Adrian interrupted, adhering to the objective fact of his revised presentation data. End quote. We are proceeding now. End quote. The shift in Adrian's personality, from reactive, stressed, and neglectful to proactive, calm, and highly scheduled, was registered by Isla as a deviation from the established norm. The attempt to save the relationship via overcorrection was paradoxically generating distrust. Isla was perceiving control where she sought partnership. Later that afternoon, Adrian took a calculated risk and contacted his sister, Nadine Mercer. Nadine was his only familial link aware of the previous timeline's complexities, though she remained unaware of the temporal manipulation. End quote. I need your assessment of the current state, end quote. Adrian requested during a brief clinical phone call. End quote. Assessment of what, Adrian? You sound like you're reading from a teleprompter. End quote. Nadine responded. End quote. The trajectory of the relationship with Isla. Has the stability index improved since my adjustments? End quote. Nadine was silent for a measurable moment. End quote. Adrian, you canceled the dinner with the Millers last month over those financials. Remember? You were furious. Tonight, you confirmed it 3 times. You are hyper-focused. If anything, you look less stressed, but more artificial. End quote. Nadine's observation confirmed a negative feedback loop. Adrian's attempt at perfection was creating emotional dissonance. End quote. Is there any observable external pressure point? End quote. Adrian pressed. He was probing for the premature appearance of Colton Reeves. End quote. No external pressure. Just you, attempting to fix something that ISN and Apo's broken yet? End quote. Nadine stated clinically. End quote. You are trying to secure the future by micromanaging the present and it and oppose s making you rigid. And quote, the rigidity was a necessary defense mechanism. Adrian was fighting time decay. That evening, during the confirmed dinner with the Millers, Adrian maintained flawless composure. He engaged in active listening, provided supportive commentary regarding Islah's professional aspirations, the exact opposite of his original failure point alpha behavior. It was successful until a seemingly innocuous social discussion concerning workplace stability emerged. Mr. Miller, a colleague, mentioned a recent department restructure at his firm. And quote, they brought in an external consultant for optimization. A very steady hand, smart guy, Colton Reeves. End quote. The name registered with immediate urgency. Antagonist variable Colton Reeves had appeared 18 days earlier than the calculated proximity timeline. The system instability was accelerating the introduction of critical external factors. End quote. Colton Reeves is highly effective, end quote. Mr. Miller continued, addressing Islah directly. End quote. He prioritizes clarity over ambition. He stabilizes environments. End quote. Islah nodded, absorbing the commentary. She was observing Adrian, whose internal state had shifted from controlled calm to critical alert. Adrian forced a pleasant expression. End quote. Stability can often mask stagnation, end quote. He interjected, attempting a subtle dismissal of the variable. Islah looked directly at Adrian. End quote. Sometimes, Adrian, end quote. She said quietly, end quote. Stagnation is preferable to constant turbulence, end quote. The statement was a definitive warning. His calculated efforts to eliminate past turbulence were registering as a new, overwhelming form of instability. Adrian had successfully established the conflict. He was fighting his past mistakes, but his desperate fight was becoming the primary threat to their future. The love he was trying to save was beginning to perceive him as the fundamental source of distress. The establishment phase was complete. The disquiet had begun. Adrian ceased the attempt to salvage the spontaneous moments, focusing instead on structural integrity. His goal was to solidify their shared foundation, eliminating the instabilities that had led to the inevitable collapse. He secured the necessary capital to avoid the financial strain that had historically fractured their third year. He paid the advance on the apartment lease, ensuring they would not have to move. The stability was achieved, but it was immediate and inorganic. Islah did not react with relief or gratitude. She reacted with calculated suspicion. The early financial success contradicted Adrian's previous career trajectory. She questioned the source of the funds, interpreting his secrecy as deception, not protective foresight. The stress factor did not disappear. It merely shifted from financial disagreement to issues of trust and honesty. The gap remained, wide and unbridgeable. Adrian began to observe the digital erasure. He attempted to log into his professional network established in the original timeline. The credentials failed. He contacted Nadine, his sister, under the guise of casual conversation, pressing for details about his projected career path, the vice president role he was supposed to assume in the coming year. Nadine confirmed the company existed but stated that Adrian was a mid-level associate, and that the executive role he described had been assigned to a candidate named Thompson 6 months prior. The future Adrian had lost was now demonstrably gone, replaced by a timeline where he was professionally stunted. The visual artifacts of his existence continued to degrade. Adrian pulled out the single photograph from his wallet, the one taken moments before their first argument at the train station. He noted the slight, but measurable transparency along the edges of his figure. The timeline was rejecting his temporal presence. The act of correction was inherently self-destructive. Colton Reeves capitalized on this instability. He was not aggressive, but constant. Colton presented Islah with a professional opportunity involving a stable, low-risk investment. This was the exact type of secure future Adrian had failed to offer his former self. Islah saw Colton as an anchor. She saw Adrian as a man constantly struggling against an invisible undertow. Adrian's attempts to eliminate Colton were clumsy and obvious. He intercepted a shared professional document, claiming technical difficulties. He fabricated a conflict that required Isla's immediate presence elsewhere, canceling a scheduled meeting with Colton. Each preventative measure resulted in deeper suspicion from Isla, who found Adrian's actions increasingly manic and controlling. He sought Dr. Elias Turner, not for genuine help, but for validation that his experience was real. Dr. Turner interpreted Adrian's detailed, dated accounts of future events as severe temporal disorientation coupled with acute obsessive grief. Dr. Turner prescribed medication to stabilize Adrian's perceived delusions regarding the timeline manipulation. Adrian rejected the medication. He needed the clarity of the future to navigate the past. The major turning point occurred during a desperate evening attempt to recreate a perfect date. One Adrian knew, by memory, had salvaged a critical point in the original timeline. They were sitting at the old jazz club. Adrian recited the conversation cues perfectly, anticipating Isla's response to a specific anecdote. Isla stopped him mid-sentence. And quote, Adrian, and quote. She stated, her voice flat, devoid of the familiar warmth, and quote, you sound like you are reading a script written years ago. You are not listening to me now. End quote. He paused, the objective reality crushing his calculated effort. He was trying to replicate love, not live it. His corrections had made their interactions clinical and artificial. That night, Adrian checked his apartment records. His name was on the lease, but the utility records showed 2 distinct service stops in the last 5 years, indicating periods of solo occupancy by Isla, periods that, in the original timeline, never existed. He realized the relationship had collapsed multiple times in this altered history, and each intervention by Adrian was merely forcing a brief, unstable reconstruction before the inevitable failure. The photograph was now dangerously clear around his shoulders. The background details, the steel architecture of the station, Isla's dress, remained crisp. Adrian Mercer was becoming a ghost supported only by his desperate proximity to Isla. The level of desperation elevated to a frenzy. He found a piece of mail addressed to Isla, confirming her commitment to the investment opportunity presented by Colton. This meant Isla was willingly merging her professional future with Colton and Apo's orbit. Adrian confronted Isla, not about Colton, but about the lack of communication. His voice was tight, high-pitched with suppressed panic. He demanded to know why she was making decisions about her future without him. Isla's response was definitive and calm. And quote, because I don't in Apos, know what future you are living in, Adrian. Everything you say and do is about fixing something that, for me, doesn't in Apos, feel broken yet. It feels like you are fighting a shadow, and you are pulling me into the darkness with you. End quote. Adrian looked at his reflection in the hallway mirror. The image was distinct, but fractured, a mosaic of glass shards. He rubbed his face, trying to ground himself. When he pulled his hand away, the reflection of his eyes was slow to return, momentarily swallowed by the depth of the glass. The timeline was processing the erasure faster than he could fight it. He drove to Nadine's office, needing concrete evidence of his original life. Nadine, sensing his deteriorating mental state, offered only professional distance. She handed him a small envelope containing documents related to an old legal matter. Inside, Adrian found a reference to a restraining order filed 3 years prior, not against Isla but filed by Isla naming a different man, a former colleague. Adrian realized the full, devastating scope of the paradox. He was so focused on correcting the specific remembered failure, he had blindly stepped into an entirely new set of disastrous circumstances. The failure he had come back to save them from was minor compared to the instability and possessiveness he had actively introduced into this new timeline. The clock on the wall in Nadine's office, the clock Adrian knew was present in every crucial moment of his life, ticked loudly. Adrian looked down at his hand, observing the slight tremor. The outline of his fingers, resting on the desk, appeared unnaturally faint against the dark wood. The timeline was preparing to sever the connection entirely. He was successfully driving Isla away and simultaneously ensuring that when she looked back, there would be nothing left of him to miss. His attempts to save their love had secured his complete, objective non-existence. The future was not yielding. It was consuming. The confrontation occurred near the fountain in the city square, a place Adrian had insisted upon revisiting. It was raining lightly, intensifying the coolness of the scene. Adrian, exhibiting severe psychological fatigue, attempted his final corrective maneuver. He presented Isla with a chronology of their recently salvaged dates. He spoke with precision, referencing the restored details. The exact restaurant reservation, the color of the flowers he purchased, and the avoidance of the sensitive political discussion that had historically initiated their initial breakup. "Look at the proof," Adrian stated, his voice tight and controlled, like a machine running on borrowed fuel. "I fixed every known error. We are stable. We are exactly where we were supposed to be before everything collapsed." Isla looked at him with an expression that was clinical and tired. She did not see meticulous effort. She saw desperation disguised as optimization. "You are operating on a script, Adrian," Isla replied, her voice low but firm. "You have been addressing problems I didn't even know we had, and you are correcting feelings that did not need correction. We were flawed, yes, but we were real. Now, every interaction feels like a test you are desperate not to fail." Adrian stepped closer, his posture radiating frantic energy. He tried to touch her face, but she subtly pulled back. "This is Colton's influence," Adrian countered, the accusation dry and immediate. "He is promising you safety, a path free of complication. But we had depth, Isla. We had history. Remember the trip to Maine? The failed fishing trip? The moment we decided, I remember Adrian." She cut him off. "But the Adrian who lived that memory is gone. He was reckless and unpredictable, yes, but he was present. You are not present. You are fighting a ghost, the ghost of a relationship that only exists in your memory, Adrian. And I am left here with a shadow." The accusation struck him with the force of a physical blow. He realized, with devastating clarity, that his constant rewriting had not patched the relationship. It had eroded the foundation of trust. By eliminating the flaws that defined their human connection, he had inadvertently eliminated the unique character she had loved. Isla continued, her gaze unwavering. "I need a partner who chooses me today, not someone who is constantly reliving and fixing a theoretical past. Colton offers clarity. He offers certainty. He offers reality. I gave up my future for you," Adrian shouted, the controlled facade finally cracking. The statement was incomprehensible to Isla, who interpreted it merely as a metaphor for his current emotional volatility. "That is precisely the problem, Adrian. You have given up too much, perhaps including yourself. You are unstable, and instability is not love." Isla then articulated the resolution that Adrian had labored to prevent. She stated clearly that the relationship, regardless of the corrected history, was concluded. There was no path forward. Her future lay in the present, and Adrian, by his actions, had removed himself from it. As Isla turned to walk away, Adrian experienced the irreversible consequence of his temporal interference. He caught sight of his reflection in the fountain's wet, polished marble surface. The reflection was unstable. It flickered violently, dissolving at the edges, pulling apart into thin silver threads. The photograph he always carried, the single remaining piece of evidence of their original, unedited love, slipped from his suddenly unresponsive fingers. He looked down and saw that the image of Isla was entirely gone. Only his silhouette remained, thin and transparent, superimposed on the park bench. The timeline had reached singularity. Adrian Mercer, the man who had abandoned his future to save his past, had no remaining existence point. The stability he had enforced on Isla's life required his complete erasure. A sudden, sharp pain lanced through his temporal lobe, followed by a profound coldness. He understood. He had succeeded in eliminating the instability that cost him Isla the first time, but the cost of the correction was his own presence in the new timeline. He had manufactured a perfect future for her, a future where she would be happy and safe with Colton Reeves, a future that simply did not include the possibility of him. He watched Isla disappear around the corner, her silhouette blending with the indifferent structures of the city. He made no move to follow. There was no movement left for him to make. He looked down at his hand, observing the final stages of his systemic dissolution. The deep blue color of his coat seemed to thin into vapor. He realized his body was no longer registering physical sensation. He was transitioning from a participant in reality to a ghost in the memory of the past he had just destroyed. The desperation ceased, replaced by a devastating, objective calm. He had tried to defeat consequence, and consequence had delivered the final, non-negotiable invoice. Adrian Mercer's last conscious thought was the observation that the highest form of tragedy is realizing you ruined everything by trying too hard to save it. Then, the reflection, the faint silhouette, and the temporal residue of Adrian Mercer vanished entirely from the frame. The fountain continued to flow, the rain continued to fall, and the corrected world moved on without him. Isla Rowan woke up the next morning feeling a sense of unsettling peace. The anxiety that had hovered around Adrian was gone, replaced by the reliable presence of Colton. She carried no explicit memory of Adrian's final confrontation, only a vague, lingering sense of necessary closure. Se que esta historia é intensa, e por isso que eu compartilho esses momentos. Se você valoriza a verdade e gosta de histórias que te fazem pensar e sentir, faça o seguinte. Considera se inscrever no canal e comente de qual cidade você está assistindo. O melhor jeito de garantir que você não perca a próxima lição de vida. The erasure of Adrian Mercer was achieved not through violence, but through systemic non-existence. His final moments were spent watching Isla, free of the confusion his time meddling had caused, embrace the future she genuinely desired, a future defined by stability, exemplified by Colton Reeves. The timeline had corrected itself by eliminating the source of paradox. Adrian had successfully ensured Isla's happiness, provided that happiness did not include him. This outcome concluded the experiment in retrospective control. Adrian's obsession with the precise moment of failure, the time when he and Isla's relationship fractured, resulted in the ultimate self-cancellation. The moral architecture of the narrative demands scrutiny of this crucial miscalculation. The central failure was Adrian's inability to differentiate between saving a relationship and saving a person. He focused on preserving the artifact of their past love, rather than accepting the necessity of personal evolution required for a sustainable future. When he traveled backward, he carried the desperate, anxious version of himself that had originally caused the break. His attempts to modify external events, dialogue, date locations, minor decisions, only intensified the internal instability that Isla found repellent. Every attempt to secure the connection inadvertently highlighted his foundational flaws. He appeared erratic, haunted by unseen failures, and overly invested in outcomes only he understood. This behavior contrasted sharply with Colton Reeves, who represented the untouched, linear progression of reality. Colton was simply present, predictable, and untainted by the ghosts of Adrian and Apo's manipulated timeline. Isla did not choose Colton over Adrian. She chose emotional clarity over existential chaos. The consequence for Adrian was the ontological debt incurred by violating the rules of temporal causality. The future he sought to protect was his own. The future he ultimately preserved was Isla's. This trade-off required the complete forfeit of his presence. The vanishing of his possessions, memories, and professional trajectory served as clinical evidence that the universe had rejected his manufactured reality. The final, devastating realization, the core lesson of Adrian Mercer and Apo's journey, is that some forms of love are defined by acceptance, not by effort. Adrian's love was a weapon aimed at destiny, and destiny retaliated. He never accepted the loss of the relationship. Therefore, he could never truly save it. He only succeeded in ensuring that the version of Isla that moved forward, the one who needed stability, could never coexist with the version of Adrian who perpetually lived in the past. The image of the fading photograph, now entirely transparent, confirms the final state of affairs. Adrian's relevance to Isla's current life has been nullified. The desperate love he harbored forced him to make the ultimate sacrifice, the erasure of self so that the loved one may thrive. He succeeded in preventing the tragedy he feared, but only by becoming the necessary, invisible tragedy himself. This entire sequence of events offers a clear warning about the futility of fighting consequences without changing the cause. Adrian focused relentlessly on correcting the consequence without fundamentally altering the character deficiencies that initiated the consequence in the first place. Time travel provided him the tools for superficial change, but deprived him of the necessity for true internal transformation. In summary, the narrative confirms that the obsession with correction destroys the very foundation required for success. Adrian's desperate attempt to retrieve what was lost resulted in the loss of everything he was. He secured Isla's safety and happiness by removing his own perilous variable from her equation. He remains a detached observer of a life he authored but cannot inhabit. The closure is absolute. The sacrifice is complete. Now, I want to know from you. Comment here underneath. What would have been your choice in Adrian's place? Would you have made that sacrifice? And if you like surprising endings, I have left another video right here next to me. It is a shocking story. Click there. I will see you in the next video.